Everywhere I travel across America today, there's one word that seems to be coming back from so many Americans, and that's the word frightened. Everybody realizes that our country is now under the greatest challenges that we face perhaps in any of our lifetime, maybe even perhaps in the whole history of the country. And one of the things that we see under attack across America is our faith. If you look at the Washington Monument, for example, the Washington Monument from its inception had at the top an inscription that basically said, "Praise be to God." Later, or actually several years ago, the Park Service came in and took that inscription, which for as long as anybody could remember, down in the informational section of the Washington Monument, had a copy of that phraseology and on the walls around it an explanation of what it meant. They took that replica of the monument and they pushed it against the wall where you couldn't walk around it and see the inscription that said, "Praise be to God," and they literally took down from the walls everything referencing God. For flag certificates, we saw a situation where our flags used to be able to be flown over the United States Capitol, and members of Congress could request inscriptions be put on those flag certificates based on what our constituents had asked to be placed on there. The architect of the Capitol literally came down and said we could not place the word God on those flag certificates any longer, and actually told me that the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag shouldn't be on a flag certificate because it contained the word God. For the Veterans Administration, we saw them come in to our veterans who had served our country, many times had given their lives for our country, or certainly had served our country very, very well. And in a voluntary ceremony at funerals, they stopped the 13 points of the flag folding ceremony because one of those points, just one, contained the word God. And all of us remember the $621 million visitor center that was built as an adjunct to the United States Capitol, an actual part of the United States Capitol, where they refused to put the words "In God We Trust," our national motto, and actually said that the national motto was "E Pluribus Unum," and also the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, because the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag contained the word God. Now, why is all this happening? It's not because somebody's just upset about your faith or concerned that they might see a cross somewhere. I think there's a greater purpose for that. On the wall of my office in the United States Capitol, I have a copy of the Declaration of Independence and the 56 signers of that document. And the reason is because that document is the foundational document of freedom, not just for the United States, but for freedom across the world. And it contained two revolutionary propositions that were unheard of really at the time. The second proposition was that you and I had a certain set of rights. My father couldn't keep me from getting my rights. My son couldn't cause me to lose them. I couldn't even be cheated out of them by someone who would try to force me to sign them away. Those rights I simply loaned to government, who used them for me. But the first proposition, and this was even greater, was that those rights had been given to us by a Creator, and that if they were given to us by a Creator, they couldn't be taken away. Now, this big attack on faith across the country is designed to separate that Creator from those rights. If they can convince us the Creator never existed, He doesn't live, He isn't true today, or if they can convince us that there's no nexus between that Creator and the rights, that we can't talk about that nexus, they have won the argument that either the rights don't exist or that those rights were given to us by the state. If they were given to us by the state, then what the state has given to us, the state can take away. Even John Kennedy, in his great inaugural address that many people remember for his phraseology that said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." We forget that one of the key points that he had in that great inaugural address was when he said that our great fight, and I'm paraphrasing of course, but our great struggle, our great fight will be to defend the proposition of our founders, that our rights didn't come from the generosity of government, but rather from the hand of God. Now, John Kennedy and many of the people of his time believed that those challenges would come overseas or come from foreign countries. Today, they're right here in our own country. And as I look around the country and talk to many of your friends, some of them feel there's no hope. But I want to tell you today that there is hope. One of the things that we saw created in the United States Congress was the Congressional Prayer Caucus. And it was designed to draw a line in the sand and say enough was enough, and that we simply had to stop this huge attack on faith across the country. The result of the Prayer Caucus was men and women, Republicans and Democrats coming together. And what they were successful in doing is pushing back the efforts of the Park Service for the Washington Monument. We got that replica put back in the center where people could walk around it and see it. The phraseology put back on the wall. For flag certificates, after a battle of several days, we were able to get the permission again from the architect of the Capitol to put God back on the flag certificates. For the flag folding ceremony, we were able to get that back from the Veterans Administration and for our veterans. And as many of you know, we won the battle and put "In God We Trust" and the Pledge of Allegiance, not just back in the Visitor Center, but actually literally engraved in the walls. Unfortunately, across America, many of us still feel that there is tremendous bad news every time we turn on the TV, plug into our internet, or pick up a newspaper. Some of us become paralyzed with fear, and we oftentimes hear the words, "There's just nothing that I can do." But I want to tell you today, there is something that you can do. That's why we're asking you to support the Congressional Prayer Caucus Foundation. Now, the foundation is totally separate from the caucus, and it's a 501c3 organization, but it was designed so Americans all across the country can get involved in this fight to restore America. If we're going to restore America, one of the most important things that we can do is call this nation back to prayer. And that doesn't mean 50,000 people in a stadium praying for one night, but it means that we plant 2 people in one church, 3 people in one house, 4 people in a business, and we begin to network those prayer groups together, committing to pray for the country. As members of Congress, we realized that we had to practice what we preached, that we couldn't just talk about prayer, we actually had to begin doing it ourselves. And so we were able to get a small room right off from the House chamber called Room 219. It's the room that's closest to the House floor where we have all of our votes. And now, the first night of each session when we go back into Congress at the first of each week, which is normally on a Monday night or Tuesday night, members of Congress will go into that room and literally get down on their knees and pray that God would heal our country. Started with 1 or 2 members, but today there's standing room only. As people all across America realized that we were praying that first night of each week, they began joining in prayer with us. And we realized that all of a sudden that we could literally create a prayer wall around America that would be 24 hours a day if people would just commit to pray 5 minutes a day, once a week. The second thing, though, that we realize is that with all of our prayers, our leaders are under enormous attack today. They're being attacked through the judiciary and through the courts. They're being attacked with health issues and relationship problems and financial problems. And one of the things that we think is important to do is to create networks to support those leaders and just sustain them until God can take over and do what He wants to do in their lives. But the third thing that we believe is that literally the principles of this country that built America, that sustained America, are actually divinely inspired. But many of us have lost those principles today. We want to have a new intellectual awakening where we bring the best thinkers from all over America and we give a rebirth to those principles in words and phraseology that young people understand, that they relate to, and that they can hold tight and pass on to future generations. You know, we believe that America is worth the fight. And I know with your help and the help of an almighty God, we'll be successful in passing the torch of liberty to our children and our grandchildren. God bless you, and thanks for being with us.